Here with me today I have David Tucker, a project director with the Environmental Finance Center at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. David, take it away.
Thanks very much, Laura, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in with us today from around the country. I work for the Environmental Finance Center at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as a project director here, and you should be seeing on your screen there a picture of most of our team here. We are an EFC that is dedicated to helping those of you who provide environmental services like small water systems to do so in ways that are fair, effective, and financially sustainable. And we like to say that how you pay for it matters. This is the second of 3 webinars that we are doing this calendar year as part of the third round of the Small Systems Project related to energy management for water systems. This one, as Laura was saying, is about where are we starting from at our water systems, understanding our electric bills and using the new energy baseline tool. And you've already heard from Laura as well as myself. Our agenda today, we're going to start out by looking at different components of an electric bill and understanding what they mean. A lot of electric bills are different depending upon who your service provider is and what electric rate structure they have you on. But we'll show you some standard components and some variations on that. Of course, if at any time during the hour you have questions about anything we're talking about here, please do type them into the questions box. They'll go to Laura, and if she can answer something that's simple and technical offline, she'll just type back to you. But otherwise, she'll bring the questions to us on air towards the end of the hour, around the same time that we demonstrate our new Excel-based electricity baseline builder tool. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of wrap-up to do with you. Right now, to help us get to know you better who are on the call with us, we're going to launch a few polling questions through the GoToWebinar software. So you should be seeing the first one of those on your screen right now, namely, what kind of drinking water utility do you represent? Obviously, there's different kinds of ownership structures, from for-profits to local governments, not-for-profits, co-ops, associations, other kinds of drinking water utilities, and of course some of you are probably not from a drinking water utility but from a government agency or consultancy and so on. So looks like considerable majority of you have voted now. So Laura, why don't we go ahead and show those results on the screen. Great, and we can see that there are a lot of you who are not directly from water utilities, but I bet you work closely with them. Quite a few of you who are from local governments, municipalities, counties, and also quite a few of you who are from special purpose districts. Nice to see some from all of the different categories, good mix. So let's go on to the next slide now, and the next polling question. Again, trying to get to know you better here today. We're wondering what size drinking water system you operate with your utility, how many people you're serving. This is not the number of connections, but the estimated service population. And we've got 4 size categories here, ranging from very small to large or very large. And again, of course, some of you are not yourselves drinking water utilities. All right, looks like most people have voted there, and looks like we've got, of the water utilities, we've actually got quite a few large or very large ones, but we also have quite a few small and very small ones, not so many in the medium. Let's go to the third polling question. Would like to know, for those of you who are water utilities, when you look at your electric bills or look at the electric rate schedule that your utility has you on for your water system, do you feel that you understand it perfectly from start to finish, in which case you can help me teach the webinar, or do you understand the electric bill but maybe not everything about the different rate schedules that are offered by your electric utility? Kind of foggy about both of them, never really looked at either of them, or you're not a drinking water utility. All right. Well, it looks like most of you have voted here, and we've got a good range. And that's a good thing, because we've pitched this webinar to speak to you at a number of different levels of understanding here. All right. Well, thanks for answering those questions. Let's move on into the subject of understanding your electricity bill. I looked up recently from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, should say that instead of association, sorry, part of U.S. DOE. The average retail price for electricity these days across all different customer classes is about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Can be a bit more, a bit less, depending upon where you are in the country and what kind of customer class you fall under. And here you should be seeing a sample electricity bill. We tried to blank out who it is who shared it with us, but it's actually for a small water system somewhere in the U.S. And this sample bill is actually embedded into the Excel-based tool we'll be showing you later in the hour, and it'll be part of the demo that we're going to do there. So what are typical components of an electricity bill? Well, you're pretty much always going to have a customer charge, goes by other names too, and we'll expand on all of these in just a minute. Pretty much always going to have a consumption charge, which in the United States is typically done by kilowatt hours, as opposed to other measures of energy like British thermal units. You may or may not have a demand charge for power, usually denominated in kilowatts. And there are sometimes other charges. There may not be, but there can be quite a few different ones. You should be aware that the different components of your bill, they flow out of which electric rate structure your utility is falling under at the present time. And in some cases, you might find that there's a choice that you have. It's going to be on a per electric meter basis, of course, but because you may have multiple electric meters for your water system. But in some cases, you may be able to switch electric rate structures with your utility. Utilities, when they offer multiple electric rate structures, there typically are requirements like a minimum or maximum number of kilowatts of power that you demand. Just what kind of entity are you? Some, electric rate structures may only be available for certain kinds of entities, and so on. And we can talk more about that later. So the customer charges, also called base charges or service availability charges, they're typically charged on a per electric meter basis, regardless of how little or how much electricity you're consuming. It's a charge per billing period, so frequently that's going to be per month. Some of you may be on some other kind of billing period, like per quarter or per every 2 months. This charge usually is used by the electric utility to cover at least some of their administrative costs of providing service to you, their customer, and providing you access to or connection to their electric grid. The base charges may vary which one they put you under depending on things like, are you being provided with single-phase electric power, triple-phase electric power, or other considerations. So here's a quick example. This is from an electric utility that we have seen some of their rate structures and customer bills, and they have a commercial rate class where there's either a single-phase or triple-phase electric connection, and the customer charge goes according to that. There's also a large power customer class and something called a curtailable large power customer class, where you get credits on your bill if you agree to be on this and you qualify to be on this, and they can cut back on the power they deliver to you at times. And then to kind of claw back some of the credits they're giving you, they have a larger customer charge than the typical large power class there. Consumption charges could be called usage charges, a lot of other kinds of things. This is really the charge for energy, for kilowatt hours. It's probably going to be charged monthly on on a per kilowatt hour basis. The utility will probably be using this to cover the cost of fuel, among other costs that they have. It may vary based on the season. It may vary based on the time of day. There may be no such variation in your plan, your electric rate plan. And again, this is for energy. Think of it as like the total amount of stuff that you are buying from them. Like when you sell water to your customers, the total number of gallons of water or hundreds of cubic feet of water that you're selling to them per billing period. So an example here of the consumption charge, or energy charge as it may also be known. In this case, it's a little over 10 cents per kilowatt hour for folks in the commercial electric rate customer class. And that is what we would refer to as a uniform rate. So the rate does not go up or down. It's just as many kilowatt hours as you buy, this is the rate. The utility in question also has another customer class, a large power customer class, where there is a decreasing block rate. And this is a visualization of that, where as you buy, you pass certain thresholds, but as you buy more and more kilowatt hours during the billing period, they drop the rate down, and it goes down from 10 cents per kilowatt hour down to about 9, about 5, and a little under 5. And of course, some of you who have water systems where you're charging rates to your customers for water may do the very same thing here, where you may have uniform, you may have an increasing block rate structure for your water rates. There are many different kinds of electric rate classes or customer classes out there. This is just a quick bullet point illustration of some of the bill component differences between these two classes. Really, the main thing is that the large power one has a demand charge in there, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, and the commercial one does not. And as far as the energy charge goes, the per kilowatt hour charge, the commercial one on the left has a uniform rate, large power on the right has a decreasing block rate that we were just looking at. These electrical rate structures are called a lot of different things. Sometimes the names of these rate structures sound like the names of your water rate structures. Sometimes they sound very different. A lot of you may end up being on an electric rate structure called small general service or medium general service if you're a small water system. Of course, it could be called a lot of other things too. And when you look at the energy charge or consumption charge part of it, three of the most common kinds of volumetric rate structures you're going to see there are uniform rate, increasing, also called inclining block rates, or decreasing, also called declining block rates. Demand charges, if you have them on your bill in the first place, are charged on a per kilowatt basis usually. Sometimes it is on a per kVA basis, which gets into this question of real power versus apparent power, where a portion of the power that is delivered to you by the electric utility you may not be able to use, and so they don't charge you just on the basis of what you're able to use, but the total amount they deliver. So that is a whole conversation by itself there. If you want more explanation of that, we can get into it in the Q&A session. But the main thing to emphasize here is that with demand charges, where you're paying for power, and this is not the total amount of stuff that the electric utility delivers to you per month, it is more the rate of speed, like the rate of speed on a speedometer on a car. So at a peak period, just how fast are they pumping those electrons through the wires to you to meet your peak demand? The demand charge will frequently be charged on a peak. It can be a coincident peak between your peak and the utility's peak. It can be calculated on the hour of most usage per month, the 15 minutes of most usage per month. I've seen 30 minutes. I've seen other periods of time. And oftentimes the reasons that an electric utility will include a demand charge is to help cover at least some of their capital costs, especially for peaking capacity. Now, what does peaking capacity mean? I realize some of you are probably familiar with that, but for those who aren't, a typical electric utility out there may have a number of different power plants, and they may have a number of different fuel sources for those different power plants. They may have a base load capacity. They're generating from coal or natural gas or nuclear power. Then they may have peaking plants they bring on at those times of day, like early in the morning or when people are first getting home from work and people are turning on the heater or the AC, that kind of thing, the washer and the dryer. And then they're bringing on more expensive plants like diesel-powered plants, possibly renewable energy plants, though that would depend because renewable power is getting more and more affordable in many ways these days. But in any event, especially if it's a larger customer of the electric utility, they may assign a demand charge too. And that gets to the question of how do you manage your peak for your water system if you have any leeway in how you do that. Another thing to be aware of with demand charges is that, you know, with the energy, with the kilowatt hours, you're just going to be charged this month for what you use, and that's the end of it. And next month you'll be charged for what you use next month, and that's the end of it. With the demand charges, some of these rate structures will have what are sometimes called ratchets. They go by other names too, demand ratchets, where basically they look back when they're generating your bill each month and they say, oh, we're going to look at not just the top hour per month for this month, but we're going to look at the top hour for any month in the last 6 months or any month in the last 12 months. And that highest peak across that whole look-back period is what we're going to charge you on this bill. So if you have 1 month where you are running all of your equipment at your water system just flat out at full power, you may end up paying for that, you know, next month and the month after and for the next year. But it will depend upon exactly what the arrangements are on your electric rate structure. So an example of a demand charge, again, typically measured in kilowatts, kW, it's a measurement of power demanded at a given instant in time. Now that instant, as I said, maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, but it's not the whole month or the whole quarter. And in this case, the example we're seeing here for the commercial electric customer class, there is no demand charge for this particular utility. For the large power electric customer class, they're charging $1.95 per kilowatt, which is kind of low for demand charge. And then with the curtailable large power, we just put in this comment here to say that basically the credits you get there virtually wash out the demand charge. So it kind of, the one washes out the other. So this is an illustration from a car, obviously, of what I was talking about a moment ago. The energy charge or consumption charge measured in kilowatt hours is like your odometer. Did you travel 200 miles this month, 500 miles, 1,000 miles this month? The demand charge or power demand charge measured in kilowatts is like your speedometer. How fast are you going right this minute? How many miles per hour or kilometers per hour are you going right now? There can be other kinds of charges on an electric bill, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but I wanted to at least mention a few of the ones that I've seen recently and show you a few examples of that as part of trying to help you understand your own electric bill. Sometimes the cost of fuel to generate the electricity is broken out separately on a bill as a fuel charge as opposed to just being subsumed completely under the consumption charge or other charges we were just talking about. There may be a line loss charge to help cover some of the cost the electricity has with the loss of electricity that is delivered across a line, because every electric power line has some loss to it, no matter how well built and well designed it is. And the farther it goes, the more electricity is lost from the point of generation to the point of delivery. There may be maintenance charges broken out separately as a surcharge. There might be a charge that is allowed by legislation in a given state to recover some of the costs the utility has to comply with a renewable energy and energy efficiency portfolio standard, like we have here in the state of North Carolina. If applicable, there may be some taxes on the sale of electricity that are then broken out separately on your bill, and on and on. So here's an example of line loss surcharge and a maintenance surcharge. They are assigned on a per kWh basis for this utility that we're drawing this from, and that's in addition to the per kWh energy charge or consumption charge that their customers are paying them. And this applies to the commercial and large power customer classes. There were a series of other surcharges that we saw here on a per kWh basis for these two customer classes. Other post-employment benefits, payment in lieu of taxes to the territorial government, and insurance. It was interesting to see that broken out. Again, there was a separate fuel charge which was broken out on top of the customer charge, and this in many ways was because this utility is located on an island in one of our territories where they're having to bring in fuel oil from off-island to generate their power. It's a very expensive way to do your fuel source for electricity generation. When you have surcharges like a fuel surcharge, it also may not be the same throughout the whole year. The rate per, in this unit, in this case per kilowatt hour, might go up from or down from month to month or quarter to quarter. There are options that you might be able to ferret out from looking at your electric bill and understanding it better to help you reduce your bill, to help you save money for your water system, which is, I'm sure, why you're all tuning in here in the first place. So you might notice on your electric bill, if you take a closer look at it, that there are time of use rates. Now, I think you frequently will not see that for a lot of you who are small water systems around the country, but some of you might have a time of use rate, and if you do, you can look at things like, can you switch some of your pumping from a higher electric cost time of day to a lower electric cost time of day or time of the week? And you may or may not have discretion over that, but it's something you could look into. Time of use rates also might mean not just time of day or time of the week, it might mean the season. There might be higher electric rates during one time of the year versus another time of the year. There are such things as interruptible rates. You typically have to opt in for them. I think we were talking about that a moment ago, where you give the electric utility permission within certain boundaries, certain restrictions that are agreed to contractually, to where they can reduce or terminate your power use altogether. I think frequently these interruptible rates are not good for water systems because of your absolute requirement. You have to meet your level of service to deliver water to your customers. Net metering may be an option in some cases where, let's say you've got some solar panels on site at your water or wastewater system, and there's a time of the month where you're generating more power than you can consume yourself, and you have an agreement with the electric utility to feed some of that power back into their grid, and they will offtake it at such and such a rate that is contractually agreed upon in advance with you, 3 cents a kilowatt hour, something like that. Your electric utility might also offer on-bill financing to you, which you can take advantage of, where basically that's a whole webinar unto itself, but the main idea is they or a funder that they work with front some or all of the upfront cost of doing energy conservation measures at your location, at your water utility, and then they recover that cost by a surcharge on your bill. But if it's done right, then let's say they save you $50 a month and then $25 a month you're paying in that surcharge to pay them back, but you're getting the other $25 a month in savings right now. Once the, quote, loan, unquote, to use a roundabout term, is paid back, then you get all of the gravy. You get all of the $50 a month. That's also an opt-in thing. It's never going to happen automatically. You'd have to qualify for it if it's offered at all. And then there's that question we were talking about just a minute ago of switching your electric rate structure. And, some or all of these things you have to think through them carefully because they might require operational changes for your water utility in order for you to fully take advantage of the potential electricity cost savings available through these kinds of rates. And you'll need to consider carefully whether the cost, outweighs the benefit for you in doing that. Would the operational changes be too disruptive to your water system, or is it something that fits within the room for play that you have in your operations? Next, we want to talk about not just how to understand an electric bill, but also how to track the baseline of your electricity usage for your water system. So why should we do any benchmarking in the first place of our electricity usage for our water systems? Well, you want to know where you're starting from for several different reasons. One is, let's say you end up looking in detail at your electric usage for all of the past 12 months or all of the past 24 months, which we would strongly encourage you to do. You may be able to find usage variations from month to month or season to season and come to understand them better and come to understand what the ramifications of that are for you in terms of, do you have options to make some changes and save yourself some electricity and save some money? You can use it once you've built the baseline to track the effectiveness of any energy management projects or energy conservation measures that you install at your water system. Because after all, if you don't know where you're starting from, how can you tell how much you've saved and how long it takes the project to pay for itself that you've done for energy management at your water system? And benchmarking also is going to provide you with some valuable talking points to communicate with your stakeholders, whether it is your governing board, your water system customers, to communicate with a funder who is funding your energy improvements at your water system, and so forth and so on. So the value of benchmarking can be illustrated in a number of different ways, including looking at some outputs here from something called Portfolio Manager, which has been developed by Energy Star. I'll say more about that in a second. If you look at the two graphs on the right, this is where someone has used a tracking software package, Portfolio Manager, to put in their electricity usage for each month for the past several years, and they've seen how their energy usage is declining year to year from 2008 through 2011, ending up in about a 7% savings. And then the score that they get from Energy Star's Portfolio Manager software on how well you're doing increases correspondingly. We'll come back to Energy Star and Portfolio Manager in a second. So if you're going to use most anything to track your electric usage, you're going to need a number of things for inputs. You're going to need those electricity bills we were just talking about. And on the bills, you need to be able to identify things like billing dates, customer charges, electricity use, and those consumption charges we were just talking about, power demand and the demand charges, and any kind of meter usage metric or measurement you might want to keep track of. We'll explain that more in a moment. And then the things that can be calculated out of this that may be quite relevant to your analysis would include the average cost per kilowatt hour, average cost per day, average usage per day, demand charges as a percentage of the total bill, because that goes to, are there things we need to do to change how much of our equipment is running all at the same time to get our power demand charges down, and energy use intensity. So Portfolio Manager has been around for a number of years now. It is one example of software for benchmarking energy usage. It's been developed by the Energy Star program started by U.S. EPA and U.S. Department of Energy. EPA maintains Portfolio Manager software. It's really a great system in general. It's really a great system. So if you have, building stock for your town, City Hall, the fire station, police headquarters, the maintenance building, really is ideal for use in that way. No offense whatsoever to the hardworking people who are developing the Portfolio Manager software across time, and I have talked with and worked with them some, but I think they would agree with me that it doesn't tend to be optimal for most small water systems, because what's the number one energy cost you have? It's pumping, and those pumps are just out there somewhere in your system. It's not typically the case that you have lots and lots of buildings with lots and lots of heated and cooled square footage. It's not that kind of a frame of reference. Portfolio Manager may be more relevant, though, if you're a larger water system or if you're a wastewater system. So, for example, you saw those Portfolio Manager scores a moment ago. Those scores are, I think, available now to be calculated if you're a wastewater system, but I think still not if you're a drinking water system. But they keep innovating with Portfolio Manager across time, and I believe they're going to keep customizing it for water systems in the future gradually as they're able to do so. So with Energy Star's commercial buildings program, Portfolio Manager is one of the things that's offered under that. If you go to the Energy Star website, there's all kinds of information on there about energy management and understanding ways of saving energy for buildings. Obviously, they emphasize benchmarking as part of that process. Portfolio Manager can allow you to do quite a few things, including estimations of greenhouse gas emissions and reductions across time from changing your energy usage based upon estimations of the generation mix by electrical utility that supplies you. I can help you track green power purchases if you're doing any of that. I can help you share and report data. When you go into Portfolio Manager, you'll be able to see in summary form data from everyone who's put their data into the system there. And you can also create custom reports through Portfolio Manager for yourself. It's a metrics calculator, like we were saying. It gives you a score, gives you national medians, and so on. We get, some of us who work here at the EFC, we get newsletters from EPA Energy Star program. And they've got some webinars coming up on Portfolio Manager later this month. If you're interested, you're able to tune in. I think that URL at the top there will take you to it. So here's an example of the benefits of benchmarking your electricity usage for your water system. After you, number one, use some kind of electricity usage benchmarking. We're going to show you our Excel tool that we have developed in just a minute here. And after you have done other relevant steps like getting an energy assessment by an energy auditor or assessor, then you may be able to come up with some pretty cool ideas for your water system about how to save money, like identifying what is your higher cost water and your lower cost water and seeing if you are in a position where you can use your lower cost water first. So there's a great consulting and engineering firm out in the western U.S. where we got to work a few years ago with a wonderful guy named Steve Jones, very knowledgeable engineer. And he came up with these bullet points on strategies for using lowest cost water first. So if your water is supplied, let's say you're a groundwater system and you've got a number of different groundwater wells, you may be able to identify which of those wells are having higher versus which are having lower electricity costs per gallon of water that you pump out of the ground. Understanding various limitations on each source of water that relate to the capacity of the well or the surface water source or whatever the source is, a purchased water source, and limitations that relate to water rights or water quality, you may then be able to decide, oh, I'm going to sequence, my water pumps here to pump out in terms of the electricity cost, the lower cost water first. Doing this, you may put yourself in a position where you can automate it. You may not. This may be something that you'd have to carefully control manually based upon priorities for and demands upon your water system. There is a use for higher cost water, like when you're having your peak demand, if you will, from your customers. So just because you have higher cost water doesn't mean you're never going to use it, but you may be able to prioritize here. So this is just one of many examples that we could talk about another time. As with the whole of the small systems project, if you have questions about energy management for your small water system that relate to how can I get project ideas to save money, how can I use the benchmarking Excel tool, how can I develop an energy management plan, how can I pay for it, go to efcnetwork.org and put in a request for free technical assistance like Laura was describing earlier, and we'll see what we can do for you. Again, this is for small water systems serving 10,000 or fewer people. We spoke a few moments ago about energy use intensity metrics. There are more than one way to think of this. If you look at the bottom of this list, you can see like kilowatt hours per square footage, probably not relevant to a small water system. Watts per square foot of airflow, also probably not relevant to you. For you guys, I'd imagine the most common energy use intensity metric would probably be kilowatt hours or dollars. You're paying for those kilowatt hours per gallon of water produced. So now we're going to switch over to demoing the Excel-based electricity usage baseline builder tool that we have developed. And while I'm bringing that up in Excel, Laura, do we have any questions yet? And if so, we could take about one of them right now.
Dave, we don't have any questions right now, so I'd go ahead with the demo then.
All right, very good. Well, folks, this is our baseline builder tool. We are going to make it available to you for free. We haven't posted it to our website yet because we're still doing just a little bit more testing to it. But for all of you who have attended the webinar today, when we send out the follow-up email in the next week, which points you to where on the website you'll be able to get the slide presentation and the video recording of this webinar, we'll also attach a copy of the Excel file to the email. If you like it, send me positive feedback. If you don't like it, tell me what you would like to see different or what you'd like to see added in or what you'd like to see changed. And before much longer, we'll be posting this to our website where everybody can download it. So the first tab on the left here, in the lower left, the Instructions tab, it simply tells you, in simple terms, how to use the tool. The first tab that you're going to work with is the Electricity Use tab, and it's pre-populated for you with imaginary bills from an imaginary electric utility provider to you as the customer. And all of the dark green boxes here, this is where you're typing things in. The gray and blue boxes, you're not typing stuff in there. The gray boxes, we've got formulas in there to calculate things for you. So look in the upper left, you'll see where this is where you type in your water system name, your facility name, like let's say it's a groundwater system and we're talking about well number 1. And then there may be an electric meter there for that part of your system. You could find that electric meter number on your bill and type it in there to help you across time keep track of things consistently. If you've got a bunch of electric meters, then you're just going to want to make multiple copies of this spreadsheet or this workbook and input things into them separately, and then you can look at them side by side when you're doing things like finding out where your higher cost versus your lower cost source water is in terms of the electrical cost for pumping and so on. If you can tell from looking at your electric bill or talking to your electricity provider what kind of rate structure you have for your kilowatt hours, you can put that there, and in this case it's increasing block is just what we had in there for the placeholder for this imaginary utility. I should point out that when we're talking about demand charges for power for kilowatts earlier, I don't think I mentioned that too can sometimes be broken out into different blocks as well as into different time of usage rates per kilowatt. So here, let's look at the 15th row, and this is the electric bill for January 2014, which actually is reflected here on this sample bill tab, or an example is reflected here. I don't think it's what's input on the green tab. But if you had your bill in front of you, you just kind of go left to right here. What's the bill date? What is the customer charge? Are there other fixed charges in addition to the customer charge? You could put that in column D. How many days in the billing cycle? Then the variable costs can include things like your total electricity use in kilowatt hours. You know, if all you have for kilowatt hours on your bill is that energy charge, consumption charge, this is where it would go in. Now, we saw some of those surcharges, some of those riders, didn't we, from that example utility. You could go and add all of that together separately somewhere, like on this blank worksheet tab here. And then once you've done that math, or you could just do it with a formula in the cell here, then you'd add up all of the kilowatt hours. And then the total costs. Probably you'd only put the kilowatt hours in once, but you might have to sum things up here in the total costs if you have some of those kinds of riders or surcharges. The peak demand is usually going to be in kilowatts, might be in kVA, but however it's denominated on your bill. And if you don't have demand charges, you'll just leave that column blank. The same with column I. If you have a demand charge, put it in there in dollars. If you don't, just leave it blank. Those of you who have taxes on the sale of electricity on your bill or other miscellaneous charges that don't really seem to fit any of these other categories to the left, you could put them in here in dollars. Then all of that is going to get summed up here in column K. Then you'll be returned an average kilowatt hour cost, also an average cost per day, average electricity use per day, and what the demand charge is, if you have one, as a percentage of the total bill. And we'll see more about that in the graphs tab in just a moment. Now, we're talking about energy usage intensity a moment ago. You have a choice here, if you want to put anything in column P at all, what it's going to be. And you can actually type into this cell here, P14, you can type over it what it is. So like, let's say it's going to be not per resident, not per building, not per square foot, but it's going to be like a kilowatt hours per gallon of water produced. So you get to type in what it is there and then the numbers down below that. The numbers will depend upon what kind of metric you have chosen. And then the per unit, I'm sorry, this is where you type in the total number of units. So like total number of gallons, say, that of water produced by this facility. And then column Q will calculate the intensity for you. So this one's got, what is it, 5/100ths of a kilowatt hour per gallon of water produced. And then you can have as many rows as you want. We've got about a year and a half pre-populated in here. You just keep, adding rows as you need there. It's often good to create at least 1, if not 2 years worth of data here before you start analyzing and saying, what does this all mean? And to do some of that analysis, we've got a number of graphs here that we think can tell some interesting and important stories. So in the upper left, a pretty straightforward one, your total monthly electric bill. The sum of all of those different cost components on the electric bill. This water system, at this part of the water system, for this electric meter, their costs are going way up in the warmer months of the year. If we're in the northern hemisphere here, which we are, and probably they are having to deliver more water to people and thus having to pay more money to the electric company to pump it. Over here, we're seeing that, as it happens, coinciding with those larger total bills, the percentage of the bill that is this medium orange here, which is, sort of in the middle, top to bottom. The percentage of the total bill, got 100% is the very top of this box here. that comes from the demand charges decreases. And that indicates that in this time of the year, it's not really that peak demand at a particular instant is going up. It's more just throughout the day they're just pumping a lot more water and therefore consuming a lot more kilowatt hours of electricity. If you scroll down here a little bit, we see monthly electric use in kilowatt hours here, which, as you can see, echoes the bill pretty closely. But this only includes the kWh charge. It does not include the customer charge. This is a flat charge or demand charges. And this is the cost for those kilowatt hours. Also, these two shadow each other pretty closely here, don't they, left and right? Here we have the same except in terms of average daily use, so it's per day. Peak electric demand, if you've input anything for demand charges. And then we have at the bottom here electric intensity. And we're going to get to some questions in just a minute here. I just want to point out, so, if you were using this tool for real, for yourself, you would blank out these green boxes that we have pre-populated for you, so you can put your own data in there from your own bill. And we'll call it, town of Tuckerville. We'll keep it still groundwater well number 1 here. We'll say it's electric meter number 101, and we'll say it's not an increasing block rate structure, it's a uniform rate, or maybe I can't even find it on the bill, so I say I don't know. And then we can go over here to the sample bill, and we can say, number of days in the billing cycle is 30, so that would go in right here. The bill date, well, it looks like it's for November of 2014, basically. The customer charge, that's the number of kilowatt hours used. That's not the customer charge. Aha, here it is. It's the combination of two things, the grid access fee and the franchise fee. So we would add those two together. I want to leave enough time for questions, so we'll just use made-up numbers here. And then you put your kWh in here, your kW in here, the dollar cost for each, and so on. And it would return the kinds of things you saw a moment ago. All right, so Laura, I think you have indicated to me here we have some questions from the field. What's our first question?
Yes, we do. So this first one has to do with the baseline tool. This person is asking, do you need to use a whole new Excel workbook for each electric account, or just copy the electricity cost worksheet?
That's a great question. I mean, the way we have been thinking of it is you'd use a whole different Excel workbook for each electric meter that you have at your water system. Now, if you're, a clever and savvy Excel user, then you can ask us for the password to unlock the tool, and then once we give that to you, you could go in and modify it and add, like, multiple electricity use tabs, multiple graph tabs, and that kind of thing. That could get a little confusing for some folks, so the first idea is use a different copy of the workbook of the Excel file for each electric meter that you have.
Great, thanks, David.
Sure.
So the next question we have is, this person has 2 different electrical providers and 2 different pricing structures. One will not sub for the other. Is there any way to make sense of that in the spreadsheet?
I'm sorry, you said one will not what the other?
One will not substitute for the other.
One will not substitute for the other. And how to make sense of that in the spreadsheet. So it sounds like part of the water system is served by one electric provider and another part of the system served by another electric provider. I mean, the first thought that comes to my mind there is, each of those electricity providers has probably got at least one electric meter at your water system. And so similar to the previous question, you would want to have a different Excel workbook for each electric meter for each electric provider. And you may not have any control over this. It may be that just part of your water system falls into Company A's electric territory and part of it falls into Company B's electric territory. But if you do have any control over it, if you have any choice of electric providers, by filling out, separate copies of this spreadsheet and looking more closely at your bills, you might find that one of them really suits your needs better in terms of the electric rate structure you're under and the cost provided, and you might only want to get onto one of them instead of both of them. But in some cases, you will not have that choice available to you.
Thanks, David.
Sure.
The next question that we have is, since this is water, why did you not include water production data and include kilowatt per hour per milligrams, I believe, and dollar per milligrams? We find these to be the most beneficial when benchmarking water systems. Then we can do peak factors, load factors, etc.
Well, thank you, Laura. That's a great question. As I was saying before, we are open to customizing this tool further if there are things that are going to be commonly of interest to the water systems that use it. I would say that in terms of what we have available currently, this, and the question may have come in before I got to this part of the explanation, but this cell here, P14, you can specify what the meter usage metric is. So if it's kilowatt hours versus per gallon of water produced, or per amount of chemicals used, or what have you, per number of customers for the water system, you can put that denominator in here, the number of gallons, milligrams, people, what have you, and then that intensity will be calculated here automatically in column Q, and it will be visualized in the appropriate graph on the Graphs tab. So, I'd suggest the questioner try it out here and see if that's sufficient for them. And if you still think it's not, then please shoot me an email and, expand upon your suggestion of how you think we should further customize this tool to be as helpful as possible. And Laura, I think we have time for maybe one more question before we move on to the wrap-up.
All right. The last question we'll take today is, how many months of electric bills for my water system should I input into the new Excel tool? And why do I need to input more than 1 or 2 monthly bills?
Great. It's a great question. We frequently recommend at least a year, if not 2 years. And the reason for that being, I know it's more work for you guys and gals. You're busy running your water systems, obviously. But if you only put in 1 month or 2 months, what if you're not really seeing the big picture of how much electricity you're paying across time, like across a whole year or a couple of years? And a couple of years may be useful too, because, what if this year was a drought year, but the previous year was not? And that affected your water sales, which in turn affected your electricity usage. Also, if there are seasonal variations to your electricity usage, that may indicate what some measures are that are available to you to adopt to try and save money. Could be a lot of different answers to that, including if you have seasonal electric rates available to you. All right, well, those are great questions. If there are any other questions that have been typed in that we haven't gotten to on air, we will contact you directly off air. We'll go back to our slide deck now, and let me make it full screen for you again. And, through the Small Systems Project, through our EFC, Syracuse EFC, the other environmental finance centers, we have a number of different resources for you for small water systems. Obviously, if you're a larger water system, you may find these resources useful as well. For example, we had another blog in this series last year on energy savings performance contracting. You can get to that blog this way. And we had a webinar in a webinar series on the same topic. Similarly, we had a blog post and a webinar on internal energy revolving funds that could be set up for your water system. And we have another Excel tool we have developed with water systems in mind, an internal energy revolving fund wizard tool to help you set up and manage that way of helping you pay for energy improvements for your water system. Laura is going to launch a couple more polling questions for you here. These are not ones where we're going to display the results to everyone. This is just a simple yes or no. Would you like to subscribe to our Environmental Finance Center's blog? If you say yes, we'll gladly sign you up. If you say no, we won't, but rest assured, we're not going to, I don't know, do something crazy like sell your email address to Chinese military intelligence or something like that. We're just going to subscribe you to the blog. All right, it looks like we're getting a few new subscribers that way, which we'll happily pass that on to the person who coordinates that for us. And we mentioned the free direct technical assistance available to small water systems serving 10,000 or fewer people as part of this project that goes through the end of January of 2017. We're going to have another phase to the project that goes through the rest of 2017, actually following right on to this one. And then this allows us to give up to 20 hours of our time from our professionals, my colleagues from the EFC network, at no cost to you, other than, of course, you'll need to provide us with a little bit of your time and some data to crunch on to try and help you with your issue around water loss reduction, rate setting, capital planning, energy management, any of the different areas of the project that Laura mentioned earlier. All right, and it looks like it's just about time for us to wrap up. Laura is, I think, going to push out to you through your chat box a link to a survey to get your feedback about today's webinar, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you think we could do better, what you'd like to see more of. If you have time right now when we sign off, you're welcome to fill it out. If you don't have to run on to the next thing, you will get this link again to the survey in the coming week when we send out the follow-up email to you with the links to the presentation, slides, and the recording, and a copy of the Excel tool. Thanks very much for tuning in with us this hour. I certainly want to thank my great colleague, Laura Flagg, who is leaving the EFC network for greener pastures, unfortunately, but who's been super to work with on a whole bunch of these webinars across the past couple of years. So thank you for today and all of that, Laura, and thank you all for tuning in today.